Westwood One Sports presents to you the most unique show in sports.
I'm going to say something now that some may take as a hot take, and I don't really care because I know that I'm right.
A show so staggeringly awesome and unapologetically original, you won't know what hit you.
Do you ever just get down on your knees and thank God that you know me and have access to my dementia?
Featuring the man himself, Nick Kostos.
For anyone else who says, oh, he's exaggerating, he's prisoner of the moment. First off, shut up. This is the National Football League. This is not the Big 12. It's not Pop Warner. An absolute disgrace. An atrocity. An affront. One of the most disgraceful performances that I have ever seen in 35 years watching National Football League football.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
What's up, everybody? Happy and merry, wonderful Football Wednesday to you and yours. This is You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports as we bring you the fastest show in all of sports. The show presented today and always by BetMGM. Make it legendary by downloading the BetMGM app and visiting BetMGM.com. And on this Wednesday, oh baby, the world of sports is alive. There is so much on the table in sports, and we will consume all of it, including why Indiana and Oregon coming up on Friday night means so much more than who will play for the national championship game in college football. I'll explain what I mean, and I will also give you my bet on the game coming up on Friday with Indiana and Oregon. I will also give you my bet for Ole Miss and Miami coming up tomorrow night, and why I think the best player will beat the better team. So we'll preview the college football playoff coming up next hour here on this Wednesday. We will talk NFL coaching news, and among that, why I think the Arizona Cardinals can avoid calamity moving forward after firing Gannon. That's a nerdy Legend of Zelda reference to the people that get it. I'm going to tell you why I think Arizona can turn it around in short order as we move along. Our friend Danny Parkins, First Things First on Fox Sports 1. Danny joins the show later this hour. We will talk about the Bears and the Packers on Saturday night from Soldier Field in the NFL wildcard round and everything happening in the National Football League. We will close the show as per usual in the final hour, the Power Hour, with all my bets for tonight in the world of sports after your boy got absolutely railroaded on Monday night with the NBA and the college basketball bets. Now, yesterday was a scheduled day off for me because I'm working Saturday and Sunday this week, bringing you NFL playoff shows nationally in the morning. But I'll be real. It's possible I might have asked for the day off, even if it hadn't been scheduled, with how poorly the bets went on Monday night. So hopefully we get those rolling coming up on a Wednesday here in the world of sports. Couple housekeeping items before we get to the big story of the day with the Baltimore Ravens and John Harbaugh. We have a new YouTube page that I want everybody to check out. Now, for the rest of the week, you can watch the show on the old YouTube page, which is youtube.com/@thebetmgm network. But that network no longer exists. We are now Westwood One Sports. So the new YouTube account moving forward, starting on Monday, will be the sole YouTube account, is youtube.com/@thekostos, which is my social media handle, Twitter and Instagram, TheKostos. So please subscribe to the new YouTube page, youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. Like and comment. We will be interacting with you every single day here on the show, in the YouTube chat, in the Twitch chat, and we're going to start taking phone calls this week as well. The phone number to chime in on whatever it is you want to talk about in the world of sports, probably the NFL or college football right now, 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910. So, you know what? Line them up. Let's go. 310-840-4910. But we officially begin the wonderful Football Wednesday edition of You Better You Bet with me, Nick Kostos. By me, reveling in my ability to tell the future. By me being the Oracle. The Baltimore Ravens need to fire John Harbaugh, and they need to fire John Harbaugh now. If you're the Baltimore Ravens, you absolutely cannot lose this game that they lost last night to the DK Metcalf-less Pittsburgh Steelers and waste an MVP caliber performance from Lamar Jackson. John Harbaugh got handed a Ferrari and is driving 40 in the right lane with it. The expiration date has been reached. You take a swig of milk, it's sour. You look at it, that son of a bitch expired in 2022. That's John Harbaugh with the Ravens. You give him his Rolex, thanks for the Super Bowl, you send him on his way. Absolutely unforgivable in a year of Lamar Jackson's prime to not make the postseason. The Ravens did not make the postseason, losing on Sunday Night Football to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I told you on Monday that there was no overreaction here for the Ravens to fire John Harbaugh. Not an overreaction, only reaction. That was the only rational reaction to all of this, was for the Baltimore Ravens to move on from John Harbaugh. And last night, they fired him. Last night, the Baltimore Ravens made it official by firing John Harbaugh. And I actually can't believe, because I'm on social media last night, right, as this is all happening. I'm posting a video on my Instagram, at the Kostos, TheKostos. Reposting it on my Twitter, at the Kostos, TheKostos. And I'm seeing the reactions from people. And people are shocked. People can't believe it. How could you do this? How could you fire John Harbaugh? And this would be like if you had a favorite restaurant and you went to the restaurant one year, right? You've liked it for a number of years, and you go to that restaurant. Food's not as good. And then you go back the next year. The food's still not as good. And now the decor is starting to decay a little bit. And then you go back the year after that, and the food's not as good, and the decor's not as nice, and now the service sucks. And then you show back up the next year, and the manager's still there. You'd probably be like, really? They haven't gotten rid of this guy yet? This person's still in charge? Look at what's happening here. This is the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you cannot enter. And I said this on Monday, but it bears repeating because people are surprised by this. You cannot enter year 9 of the John Harbaugh-Lamar Jackson partnership. You can't do it. Haven't reached a Super Bowl yet. This is Einstein's literal definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And people are surprised this happened. Now, I don't blame Baltimore Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti for the way that he phrased this in the press release that went out. Obviously, he's going to be uber respectful of John Harbaugh. And we'll get into the good that John Harbaugh did coming up in a little bit. Called this a very difficult decision. Really? Difficult decision? Like, don't make the playoffs in a year of Lamar Jackson's prime? Have never reached a Super Bowl? In the whole time Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback of the Ravens, he's won 2 MVPs along that stretch. And you haven't made a Super Bowl. Now this year, the Ravens might not have been as good as they've been in the past couple years, but even in those years, and I've jokingly referred to them because they choke in the big spots and games aren't played on a computer screen, they are the sultans of spreadsheets, the dominators of DVOA, the excellence of EPA. Whatever nerdy mathematical statistic you want to roll out talking about the National Football League, the Baltimore Ravens are at the top of the list for like for this era, this arc of the Lamar-John Harbaugh partnership. Made it to one conference championship game and got their faces shoved in the you-know-what by Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the Kansas City Chiefs in that game. And people are surprised that this is what happened. You can't keep rolling this out there and expect things to change. The Baltimore Ravens nailed this and got it right. And here's what else I would say, just from John Harbaugh's perspective. The verbiage that was used by NFL insiders was the Ravens fired John Harbaugh, with the inference and the implication being that John Harbaugh wanted to stay. I'm not so sure that's the case. Consider some reporting that came out from various NFL insiders, which was Harbaugh didn't even want to entertain potentially firing offensive coordinator Todd Monken. And a reported rift between Monken and Lamar Jackson, and that Harbaugh was kind of the buffer between the two. Now, if you're John Harbaugh, you the listener, you the viewer, if I'm John Harbaugh, and I feel like I'm going to win a Super Bowl next year with this team, with this quarterback, right? You fire the offensive coordinator. This isn't even a question. Of course you fire Todd Monken. The fact that Harbaugh was obstinate enough to say, I will risk losing my job to keep this offensive coordinator here, tells me maybe he knew that this wasn't going to work and he didn't want to be there anymore. Also consider, and we've referenced this over the past couple weeks, and it dropped during Christmas week, so if you missed it, totally okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm consuming sports content 24/7, so I can tell you about it, and you don't have to do that. Mike Preston, who's covered the Ravens for a while for the Baltimore Sun, wrote a pretty scathing column basically saying that Lamar Jackson, and I'm paraphrasing here, is immature and that he doesn't have great practice habits, etc. And you read that and you think, man, like, this ain't going to work. It's not going to work. And whether or not you think the Ravens' failures are John Harbaugh's fault or Lamar Jackson's fault, and I'm willing to say part of the blame has to go at the feet of the MVP quarterback. It has to, right? He's the one on the field throwing interceptions in the big spot. I'm willing to say that. The problem, though, is you're never firing or trading the multiple-time MVP winning quarterback. That's not how sports works. It's not how life works. I have never said John Harbaugh's a bad coach. You've never heard me say that one time. But what I have said is the expiration date has been reached on this partnership. And even if it comes out 5-10 years from now that it was all Lamar Jackson's fault, all of it, and maybe that's the case, I don't know, the Ravens still made the right move by swapping out the head coach. You can't choose the head coach over the MVP winning quarterback. It's just not how it goes. It's foolish to suggest that you are living in fantasy land if you think that would ever happen. Like the Ravens are going to trade Lamar Jackson and keep John Harbaugh. Like never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Never, ever, ever. Let me say that again. Never, ever, ever, ever in a million years would happen. In the same way that if the Bills lose this weekend to the Jaguars and Buffalo decides, hey, like we need to do something here, do you think they're going to move Josh Allen? Or do you think they'd fire Sean McDermott? What do you think would happen? Give me a break. Now, to the people out there that think and say what I'm about to say, and I respect a lot of people that have this opinion. I disagree with it, but I respect the thought behind it. They will say, you can't fire a coach unless you know that the next one you hire is going to be better. Tony Dungy tweeted that last night. Like, who are the Ravens going to get that's better than John Harbaugh? I understand the thought process behind that. But the issue is this, and this is how I think about it and how I think everybody, candidly, should think about it. You know at this point, like the history of the league dictates it, you know at this point that it ain't happening under this regime. So even if I acknowledge right now, and we'll see what happens, maybe they hire Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula, I have no idea. Whoever it is that the Ravens hire, we will be able to say, maybe it's Kevin Stefanski, we will be able to say immediately that coach is not as accomplished as John Harbaugh. How can you say otherwise? Harbaugh's won a Super Bowl. Like, unless they hire Mike McCarthy, and who's choosing Mike McCarthy in a one-for-one situation over John Harbaugh? You'll be able to say, like the Ravens on paper have downgraded at coach. You won't be able to say otherwise. It's not possible, given what John Harbaugh's accomplished. And to quote The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, it doesn't matter. about any of that. Because if you know, and I feel certain, and I've said this for years, that it ain't happening with this coach-quarterback partnership about to enter year 9, then you have to do something different. Even if something different is you're bringing in a coach that on paper might not be as good as the one you just let go, you have to try something different. You cannot keep banging your head into the wall. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So in my estimation, the ceiling for no matter who they hire, the ceiling has been raised. You've got Lamar. You have an MVP caliber quarterback. The ceiling should be win a Super Bowl every season. I'm not saying they should win every year, but the ceiling should be win the Super Bowl every year. They can't even get to the Super Bowl with John Harbaugh. So I think the ceiling has now been raised. It's also then fair to say, though, that the floor has been lowered. That maybe the next head coach of the Ravens isn't close to being as good as John Harbaugh. And maybe the norm for a couple of years for Baltimore becomes 9-8, 10-7, wild card berth. It's possible that that's the case as Lamar Jackson continues to age. And maybe, just maybe, it doesn't work. But you have to take the swing. You have to take the swing and hope that something new pushes you over the line. That is the point of all of this in the National Football League, in professional sports. The point is not to have a floor of 10, 11, 12, 13 wins in a regular season and then lose every single January. That can't be the goal. The goal has to be win a Super Bowl championship. That's the goal. Not go 12-5 and lose in the divisional round. Win a championship. And if you know you ain't winning a championship, then you try something new. I applaud the Baltimore Ravens for this decision. And I disagree when Steve, and it may have been difficult emotionally, right? Because he's been there for 2 decades, won a Super Bowl, and we'll talk about John Harbaugh, a good coach. And I'll talk about that on the other side. This was not a difficult decision if you're the Baltimore Ravens. It was the only decision. It was not an overreaction. This was the only reaction for the Baltimore Ravens. On the other side, we're going to talk about John Harbaugh as a coach and why I think he deserves a ton of credit. And I'm going to give you a couple fits because he's going to coach in the NFL next year, and he's going to be able to pick whatever team he wants to coach. And I'm going to give you guys, our listeners and viewers, a couple teams that might come out of left field, but I think are legitimate contenders to land John Harbaugh as their coach in 2026. The phone number, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. We're just getting rolling here on a wonderful football Wednesday on Westwood One Sports. It's You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos, and we are presented by BetMGM.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
That's you asking me about next year, Jameson. Like, I'm so caught up in what just happened tonight. I can't focus on that right now. So, like he asked me, are you stunned? I'm stunned right now. I'm still trying to process what's going on. Like, I know we lost, but like, you know.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
That the voice of Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson on Sunday night following the Ravens' season-ending loss in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. The Jameson in question is Jamison Hensley, who's covered the Baltimore Ravens for a really long time. But you know, if you had told me that he's actually talking to like a bottle of Jameson, as in, I need to drink my sorrows away after what's just happened, I could believe that would be the case. The Ravens missing the playoffs in a year of Lamar Jackson's prime and moving on from head coach John Harbaugh yesterday. Not an overreaction, only reaction from the Baltimore Ravens. As I said at the start of the show, we're on a couple different YouTube pages for right now, and if you're listening on the radio, on a radio station nationwide, Sirius XM 375, the Odyssey app, the Westwood One Sports app, you should be checking us out on YouTube because we're going to have tons of interactivity on the YouTube page. I'm going into the chats and talking with people during the breaks. So youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos, will be the primary one starting next week. We are still going to be broadcasting and streaming the next 3 days from the old YouTube page at the BetMGM network as well. But given that network no longer exists, we will be transferring it over to the new YouTube page coming up next week. So subscribe, like, and comment. I will be interacting with you guys during the show. And a couple YouTube comments to get to before we talk about the future for John Harbaugh. At GoBirds1211 says, you, meaning me, definitely called the Harbaugh thing. Thank you very much. GoBirds goes on to say, your NBA bets, on the other hand, not as much. Yes, I know. I talked about it at the start of the show. It was brutal on Monday night for your boy in the NBA and college basketball. And then there's this one. I'm guessing that this guy's a Ravens fan, and let me know if I'm wrong. Void Null 9222, who says, the Ravens era is over. Lamar is too old, and aside from Derrick Henry, who do they have? Zay Flowers, question mark? The Ravens era is not over, and it's not over because they have Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson, the first digit in his age, is still a 2. And today is Lamar Jackson's birthday. Today is Lamar Jackson's 29th birthday. And what a great birthday present from the Ravens. Here's a new head coach to try and get you and us over the hump. YouTube.com/@thekostos, YouTube.com/@the BetMGM network. Let's talk about what's next for Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. Now, he needed to go. And I don't want anyone to get it twisted. He absolutely needed to be relieved of his duties as Ravens head coach. But that does not mean that John Harbaugh's a bad coach. On the contrary, I think John Harbaugh is a great coach. And on the short list of best NFL head coaches of this century. 8 road playoff wins. That is the most for any coach in the history of the league. 1 Super Bowl 47, famously over his brother Jim Harbaugh and the San Francisco 49ers. Has a Super Bowl championship. And really, I actually think the Giants would have, and I'm not just saying that as a Giants fan, you can actually probably go back and find my takes prior to Championship Sunday leading into Super Bowl 46, where I said the NFC Championship game, Giants-Niners, that was the Super Bowl that year. And if the Niners had won, I would have thought the Niners would have beaten either the Patriots or the Ravens. But the Ravens were the better team that year also than the Patriots and completely choked at the end of the game. Sterling Moore punching the ball out of Lee Evans' hands, and then Billy Cundiff missing the field goal that would have sent the Ravens to Super Bowl 46. So John Harbaugh has been awesome in his time as Ravens head coach. The expiration date was reached with this team, but that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be immediately the head coach of another team in the NFL. The current openings, as it stands at this moment, the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll talk about Jonathan Gannon's firing later in the show. That happened after I went off the air on Monday. I was not on yesterday's show. The Atlanta Falcons and my New York Football Giants. Out of those teams, if we're going to view this through the prism of like what John Harbaugh is going to most likely want, right? Because if you're John Harbaugh, you bet on this Wednesday. Nick Kostos here with you on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM. If you're John Harbaugh, I don't think you want to go somewhere where there has to be some kind of huge rebuild, right? Does that strike you, the listener, you, the viewer, as something that's likely? That John Harbaugh wants to go to the Raiders, even if they have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. That roster is an absolute mess. Do we think John Harbaugh wants to go to the Cleveland Browns? I don't think so. Or to the Atlanta Falcons, where we don't know is Kirk Cousins going to be the quarterback? Did Michael Penix show anybody enough last year to have you think that he can be the guy, like definitely moving forward? I really think that the best option here for John Harbaugh out of the teams with openings right now, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Giants fan, but is the Giants. Where I really think you can say, again, think about it, right? Titans have a quarterback, but the rest of the roster is not great. The Browns don't have a quarterback, and the roster needs some serious work, and I think they can get there. The Raiders are in the worst situation out of anybody. Their team absolutely stinks outside of Bowers and Gentry, and Max Crosby may not be on the team next year. I like what the Arizona Cardinals have cooking a little bit outside of the quarterback position, but that's a big question, and the division is absolutely stacked. Right? The other 3 teams in the NFC West are all in the playoffs this year. The Falcons, I think, are in a difficult situation at quarterback. The Giants have a quarterback in Jackson Dart. And Ian O'Connor, who's long been a great reporter and analyst here locally in the New York tri-state area, works for The Athletic now, tweeted last night that John Harbaugh has affinity for Jackson Dart and that the Giants will have John Harbaugh at the top of their list, which obviously makes a ton of sense. So I do think that out of the teams with openings right now, the Giants make the most sense for John Harbaugh. But I think we need to consider a tweet last night from Diana Rossini from The Athletic. And this should come as no surprise to anyone. I don't think this is like earth-shattering news, but it's reported, and I absolutely believe it. And I actually, if she or someone else had tweeted this isn't happening, I actually wouldn't believe it. That teams that currently employ a head coach are interested in John Harbaugh. Like, just think, like, let's say John Harbaugh and his representation called Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, and said, I want to coach the Jets. Do you think they'd keep Aaron Glenn? Yeah, the first flight out of Florham Park. Or if John Harbaugh wanted to coach the Dallas Cowboys. I like Brian Schottenheimer. I think he did an okay job in year 1. We know Jerry Jones likes Brian Schottenheimer. You don't think Jerry Jones would take John Harbaugh in a second and fire Brian Schottenheimer? Please. What if he wanted to go to Tampa Bay? Like the Bucs would keep Todd Bowles over John Harbaugh? No way. No way. So I think when we're talking about John Harbaugh and his future, we have to consider not just teams with current vacancies, but teams also that have head coaches that they currently employ. I'm going to give you 2 teams, maybe a little off the beaten path, but I think absolutely need to be considered for John Harbaugh. And why I think nothing is imminent. I don't think John Harbaugh's taking a job in the next 5 days. Maybe not in the next couple weeks, depending on how this goes for teams in the playoffs. Whether or not you agree with what I'm about to say is immaterial. I don't even know that I agree with it. But there's a lot of smoke around Matt LaFleur's future employment status with the Green Bay Packers. Now, I really like Matt LaFleur. If I were the Packers, I would keep Matt LaFleur as the head coach. If I were Brian Gutekunst, the GM, I would want Matt LaFleur coaching the team. But there's a lot of smoke that has you believing that if the Packers lose on Saturday night in Chicago against the Bears, it could be curtains for Matt LaFleur. You don't think John Harbaugh would be a good fit in Green Bay? with Jordan Love at quarterback and Micah Parsons coming back next year to rush the passer? I'm just saying, the Green Bay Packers need to be a consideration. And the other team that I'll mention, and the analog here is chef's kiss is perfection. The Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson selected in the same draft class in 2018, both in the first round. Both teams have had the same coach for the duration. I've been telling you that the Ravens need to try something different because they didn't get to the Super Bowl with Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. I said this on Monday. Some people disagree. They're wrong. That's okay. We don't all have to be right about everything. I went 0 for on my bets on Monday night. It happens. If the Bills don't make the Super Bowl this year, with no Mahomes, with no Lamar, and no Burrow in the AFC, they have to fire Sean McDermott. And it's the same thing as Harbaugh. It doesn't mean that McDermott's a bad coach. He's a great coach. But at some point, the expiration date is reached, and you have to do something different. If the Bills lose in Jacksonville on Sunday, and the Bills fire Sean McDermott, would John Harbaugh want to coach Josh Allen? You have to admit, even if you disagree with me, you're a little intrigued. Last note here, and then we'll break, and Danny Parkins joins us on the other side, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. I can't imagine today being a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals, who decide to keep Zach Taylor after missing the playoffs for 3 straight years in Joe Burrow's prime. If the Bengals are not one of the teams that's interested in John Harbaugh, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. And I feel bad for the fans of the Cincinnati Bengals. Take a quick break. On the other side, joining us to talk all things National Football League and Wild Card Weekend, the great Danny Parkins from First Things First on Fox Sports 1, here on You Better You Bet, with me, Nick Kostos, and you on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
we're mentally prepared to play for 5 more weeks. And so that's our intent. How do you do that? You go out and you win the first one.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos and the crew. Presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
That is Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson stating the obvious. You want to make it to the second round? Gotta win in the first round. We will get into the college football playoff to start next hour. Why? Getting to the national championship game, one of the big storylines on Friday night with Indiana and Oregon, and my bet for tomorrow night's game with Ole Miss and Miami and the rationale behind it. But joining us right now in his weekly spot, love having him on the show, superstar from Fox Sports 1, First Things First, where I was telling him off air, and I'm not just saying this because he's my friend. Danny posted a video. Danny Parkins with us on the show, at Danny Parkins on Twitter, at Danny Parkins1 on Instagram. So Danny does a picks challenge every against the spread picks challenge. Danny is hashtag one of us when it comes to sports betting. Danny is best friends with Nick Wright, who's obviously on that show, and they've been betting on sports forever. And Nick won the picks challenge this year on FS1 against Danny with a comeback at the end of the season, and posted a video yesterday where he put a jester hat. This is not to mock Danny, obviously. It was a great piece of television, and Danny knows that. I laughed the entire time and would urge people to check that out on Danny's Instagram or otherwise. My friend, that was great television. Your Bears are the 2 seed. Not a bad time to be Danny Parkins. How's it going?
It's a good time to be me. It's going great. Thank you. Yeah, listen, I went 65% against the spread in the NFL last year. And so I wore. Yeah, that's it. So I have a big 65% chain that I wear, big King's costume as the Picks King. And I was literally from week 1 through week 16, Nick and I were never tied. I was winning the whole way. And in order for him to beat me by half a game, I had to go 0-3 in week 17 and 0-3 in week 18. And it was devastating. And he put the jester hat on me, and I have to be honest, he played it very well, and it was fun television. But I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm like a steroid user testifying before Congress. I'm here to talk about the playoffs. I'm going to destroy him in picking games against the spread in the playoffs. And yes, I confirmed that the Bears are the 2 seed, and they're playing the hated Green Bay Packers. And while I think it's an outrage that that game is not primetime on Sunday, I'm going to use it to benefit me. And I bought a plane ticket to go home to Chicago. I'll be flying in to Chicago Saturday morning, and I got the best seat in the house. I used my winnings and my television fame and fortune. First row behind the Bears bench.
Look at you.
You'll see me Saturday night in a Bears robe. It's going to be glorious.
The only thing that was missing there that was great, if I can critique a little bit, was the Rafael Palmeiro finger wag. Yeah. Like I'm not here to talk about the past, or maybe who was it? Andy Pettit who misremembered, like the hashtag Mitchell report.
Sammy Sosa forgot to speak how to speak English. It was a great moment in American history.
Incredible theater. Let's talk about the game on Saturday. Betting market has it as a pick'em. And we've said, just for people who are tuning into this show for the first time, Danny's been joining us all season. Danny gives out his picks on Friday on First Things First on Fox Sports 1. So if you want to hold, I'm guessing you like the Bears. If you want to hold your pick, that's fine. If you would like to give it, then great. And I'd love to know what your actual real confidence level is here in this game. At some books, the Packers are a small favorite. At others, the Bears are a small favorite. BetMGM right now has it Green Bay -1, 45.5 the total. Going to be cold, maybe snow in the forecast.
Yeah, the snow doesn't bother me. The wind is, could be up to 20, 25 miles an hour last I checked. So that obviously could impact the passing a little bit. That's fluctuated over the course of the week, and I haven't checked it yet this morning. But listen, both games were even. That's the truth. Both games were even. Bears could have won the first game. They were separated by less than 20 total yards, 4 total first downs. Each team had 1 sack. Each team had 1 turnover, and Caleb threw a pick on the last play. And then the second game was also epic, except the Bears came out on the other side of it. So I think these teams are even. I do think that the Bears are getting healthier. Like Roma Dunze, Kyler Gordon, guys like that coming back is a good sign for the Bears. The Packers are really banged up, and I think the Packers defense is also bad. The Bears defense is bad. The Packers defense is also bad. since Micah Parsons is out. So if it's not too windy, I like over 45 or 45.5, depending on where you're shopping. And yeah, my lean is the Bears, but I have so much emotional investment and now like tickets and flight time invested that's probably enough for me in this game.
Tell me about the robe. I feel like I should have led with that.
Yeah, so Broussard wears a Ravens robe on FTF sometimes, and I liked the look, and so they bought me like a very plush, kind of like almost like Kramer when he's the pimp type of robe. Like it's very over the top, but it's warm. It's got like a wool lining. And when I found out the caliber of my seats, I'm like, man, there's like a decent chance to do some content here. And so I figure, I'm not going to dress humbly. And so, I texted a few people on the team and let them know, like, not to mess up. Like, then I'm going to be, texted Ben John, I'm going to be looking over your shoulder. I bought tickets first row behind the bench, and he just hit me with the LFG, let's bleep and go. So, I want to be able to be noticed. And so big orange, bright robe. For your boy behind the bench on Saturday.
Just for people that are keeping score at home, was that a humble brag or a regular brag?
Just a straight brag.
I thought so. And to be fair, I would
not a lot of humbleness going on.
No, I would brag about that too. That's pretty cool. Yeah. You bet here on this Wednesday. Danny Parkins, our guest. First things first on Fox Sports 1, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern weekdays at Danny Parkins on Twitter, at Danny Parkins1 on Instagram. What'd you make of the Ravens firing John Harbaugh yesterday?
Sometimes it's time. Like, doesn't mean John Harbaugh is a bad coach. In fact, the opposite. Like, it makes obvious sense why every team wants to hire him and why I think some teams with current head coaches are going to consider hiring him. Heard you mention the Packers before the break. His agent is Brian Harlan, big-time coaching agent, son of former Packers executive and president Bob Harlan. Could be he's very connected to the Packers.
And Kevin's brother. And broadcast, Kevin Harlan's brother.
Yeah, and Kevin Harlan's brother, very powerful agent, but he also represents Matt LaFleur. So, like that, if he ends up in Green Bay, there's like a lot of machinations that would need to take place for that one. But point is, John Harbaugh is going to probably be able to name his price and name his team, and I agree that there's going to be some surprising people that are interested in it. But Theo Epstein used to talk about this all the time, and he got it from Bill Walsh. He believed in the theory of 10 years. That Bill Walsh said that after 10 years, it was time for leaders to part ways because the leader needed a new challenge and the people that they were trying to lead, the message would grow stale. They needed a new person to deliver the message. So Bill Walsh applied that to the Niners. Theo Epstein applied it to the Cubs. He got out after his 9th season. And John Harbaugh lasted 18 years. And so I think that it was time. All of the close losses, all of the heartbreak, whatever disconnect there may or may not have been with Lamar Jackson, if you believe the reporting about Greg Roman, whatever your theory as to why, 18 years, it's probably just time for it to run its course. And John Harbaugh can have tremendous success with his next team. And the Ravens are the best opening now in the NFL because you get an organization that has only had 3 head coaches in their history. And you get to coach 29-year-old Lamar Jackson. So, I think both sides can win this breakup.
And Bill Walsh lived that. Literally walked away from the Niners after winning Super Bowl 23, and then George Seifert, the DC, gets promoted, and they win Super Bowl 24, destroy the Broncos in New Orleans 55-10. Pencil, not pen. That was me. I just know a lot.
Yeah. Just being a dork.
Yeah. Lean into your strengths. Pencil, not pen here. A minute for the answer, just because I want to get more thoughts on Wild Card Weekend. Pencil, not pen. John Harbaugh will be coaching blank in 2026.
The New York Giants. Your team. I think a bolder pick is Buffalo. And I think if Buffalo wants him, that is a better job because you get Josh Allen. But whether you like Jackson Dart or not, young pass rushers, young star wide receiver, decent cap situation, top 5 pick. It's a New York market. It's a pretty attractive job. Now, I would have problems with Joe Shane being attached to that job, and I am not as big of a believer in Jackson Dart as everybody else seems to be. but the ability to coach an iconic franchise like that with all of those things going for it, that is probably the safest bet on the board right now.
I'm not reporting anything when I say this, but I was talking to a Giants source last night who told me that he thinks that, and I don't know if John Harbaugh would do this or not, but if John Harbaugh said to John Mara, I'll come coach the Giants, but you have to fire Joe Schoen, that's the only coaching candidate that would be able to. I don't know that he would do that. I'm not reporting it. Just saying that I thought that was interesting that someone that's plugged in with the team shared that with me last night. So we'll see.
Yeah, he's got the gravitas to make that ask. No question.
And
no question.
And if the Giants kept Joe Schoen over hiring John Harbaugh, like we might have to, like we need. I know that Nick is type. We need Pablo Torre to find out what's happening with Joe Schoen and the New York Giants.
You'd have an aneurysm on the air if that happens.
I think I think I've spent all my. I think there's no more emotion left to spend. I think I'm like a battered husk at this point of a fan. 30 seconds left.
Yeah.
Give us your best bet for wild card weekend in 30 seconds.
Chargers plus 3.5. Herbert's awesome. Their defense is really good. They got all their rest in week 18 heading into the game. And I think that they intentionally did it, not just to protect Herbert against the Broncos in week 18, but because they looked at the board and said, the Patriots have by far the weakest pass rush, and they wanted New England. Like, New England has some, like, counting stat defensive numbers that look okay, but every underlying thing suggests their defense isn't very good, especially as a pass rush. So and a run defense, frankly, they're just not good defensively. So I think the Chargers will be able to move the ball and keep Herbert upright. I love them plus 3 and a hook.
I love it too. I think they might win. I can't wait for it on Sunday night.
I have some plus 170 money line in my investment portfolio. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure. Right next to Apple, I'm sure. I'll be looking for you on Saturday night. Danny Parkins, the star of Amazon's NFL broadcast with the Bears and the Packers in the orange robe. Enjoy, my friend.
Whether they want me to be a star of it or not, I'm going to be right there.
I love it. Danny Parkins here on You Better You Bet. At Danny Parkins on Twitter. At Danny Parkins1 on Instagram. First things first, weekdays on FS1. 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Hour 1 done, hour 2 for you. Coming up on the other side, we will start the hour previewing Oregon, Indiana on Friday night.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
The biggest names in the business are on You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos.
Hey, this is Joe Buck, and you have done it. You have found it. You are listening to You Better You Bet. Great decision.
Hi, this is Kevin Harlan of CBS, Westwood One, and TNT, and I'm listening as you do every day to You Better You Bet with the most handsome single man in the radio business. A man who, if I was not married for 38 years, I might consider myself the kind of guy that can electrify a listening audience and a crowd of bystanders watching him do what he does so well each and every day. Continue to listen right here on You Better You Bet.
This is You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Brought to you by BetMGM.
The wonderful Football Wednesday edition of You Better You Bet rolls on. Nick Kostos and you here on Westwood One Sports. The show presented today and always by BetMGM. And speaking of BetMGM, if you, the listener, you, the viewer, if you're betting on the NBA this season, and I am, Monday night did not go great for me, as a couple YouTube commenters have pointed out. I said it at the start of the show. Trust me, I'm betting these games. I know when I lose. Monday night was an absolute debacle. So if you, the listener, you, the viewer, if you're like me and you're betting on the NBA this season, because I love the NBA, you love the NBA, we'll talk some NBA at the end of the show. Here's something that's going to take the pressure off your picks. Oh my God, like my antenna's up right now. I need some pressure off my picks right now. With today's NBA no sweat token, you don't need to sweat it if your bet doesn't hit. Oh my God. Like, where was this for me on Monday? I need this. If your bet doesn't hit, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $1,000. This sounds like, honestly, I mean, you need to be betting at BetMGM because BetMGM's the best. Make it legendary. I'm going to read this again. With today's NBA no sweat token, you don't need to sweat it if your bet doesn't hit. You can get your stake back in bonus bets up to $1,000. Download the BetMGM app. Visit BetMGM.com so you can make it legendary and also, like, give yourself the best chance at winning money. Me, first and foremost, on that list. Thank you to everybody that's watching the show right now on YouTube. Bit of a transition period here, right? Because the BetMGM network no longer exists. But, and rest in peace. Great run. We are still being streamed for the next couple days on the BetMGM Network YouTube page. But we are also being streamed for the next 3 days. And starting next week, the sole YouTube feed for the show is youtube.com/@thekostos. youtube.com/@THEKOSTOS. And that is my social handle as well on Twitter and Instagram, @thekostos, THEKOSTOS. So we have people watching in both chats right now. Both youtube.com/@thebetmgm network and @thekostos. If you're in the BetMGM network page, I would encourage you to go subscribe to youtube.com/@thekostos. I'm going into the chats during the breaks. I will interact with you. We will bring up your comments on the air. So be sure to do that. And I'm going to roll through a couple right now. A bunch of the real ones are chiming in. How about our friends, AMW0720, Steelers fan here. Very jealous of Ravens fans for being able to bring in a new regime. Thank you to AMW, and I certainly understand that thought process if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I will add this. I think the Steelers are going to beat the Texans on Monday night. And that point spread was 3.5 yesterday at BetMGM. I mean, that is your number to bet the Pittsburgh Steelers. Houston can't score. Houston, we've got a problem. And the problem is the offense. And Pittsburgh's a home dog on Monday Night Football. Now, I don't actually believe in things like this, and I mean that sincerely. This is not the setup to a joke. The Steelers haven't lost at home on Monday Night Football since they lost to my New York Football Giants with Ray Hanley as the coach in 1991, which has nothing to do with anything, but it is a really fun stat, and I just wanted to say it. So forget about the points. Give me the Steelers on the money line. And I'm curious, if and when the Steelers win on Monday night, will Steelers fans still want Mike Tomlin out? Just something to think about as we head into Monday Night Football with the Steelers and the Texans. How about this from Jay Wickers 0128? Jay Wickers, we appreciate you chiming in. Being from Buffalo, something I think the national media gets wrong. Okay, I'm willing to admit when I get stuff wrong. Buffalonians, is that a word? Buffalonians know Terry Pegula, who is the owner of the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. Pegula not going to get rid of Sean McDermott. I know you could argue he should, but he will not. And Jay Wickers, I'll say this, like, you may be right about that. It's possible. And I know that a lot of Buffalo sports fans, and like I know like no one nationally, and don't be offended by this, no one nationally cares about the Buffalo Sabres. But the Sabres kind of have the same deal going on, right? With the general manager that's been there for far too long. Pegula owns that team also. I would have to imagine, like, no one cares about the Sabres. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just the truth. Everybody cares about the Bills. And if the Bills lose this week in the first round, you know that things are going to be worked up into a fever pitch. So maybe you're right about that, but I don't think that, like, that Terry Pegula would not fire Sean McDermott just because he doesn't want to. It may reach a point where he has to, depending on how this game goes on Sunday against Jacksonville. Kevin Hilmers has been a real one. Shout out to him. Been with You Better You Bet literally since day one in 2019. He says, the NFL is very interesting. We would be having a completely different conversation about John Harbaugh if Tyler Loop made the field goal on Sunday night. It would be Tomlin fired instead of Harbaugh. And Kevin would go on to later write, do I think the Steelers would have fired Mike Tomlin if they had lost on Sunday night? So I'll split the difference here, Mr. Kilmers, on your take. I don't think that John Harbaugh definitely keeps his job if Tyler Loop makes the kick on Sunday night and wins the AFC North. I think that he needed to make like a good playoff run here. Like absolutely would have needed to beat the Texans at home on Monday night. Probably would have needed to get to at least the conference championship game. Now, I can't prove that. There's no reporting that says it, but that is my sincere thought here, is that winning the AFC North at 9-8 would not have been enough to save John Harbaugh's job. They needed to make a decent run in the postseason. So I don't think just if Tyler Loop makes the kick that he keeps his job. I think they needed to win 2 games for John Harbaugh to keep his job for next season. And I actually don't think the Steelers would have fired Mike Tomlin if they had lost on Sunday night. Like, I think what Jay Wicker said about the Pegula family, we can absolutely say about the Rooney family. Like, right, wrong, or indifferent, and I actually think it's wrong. And I think the Steelers should consider moving on from Mike Tomlin unless they make a huge run here. I've been saying that for years. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported about a month ago the Steelers are not going to fire Mike Tomlin. You'll notice Schefter never said that about the Ravens and John Harbaugh. I think Tomlin's coming back no matter what next season. They could lose by 30 on Monday night, and I think Mike Tomlin is still back as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last one here from the YouTube chats, and thank you very much to everyone for chiming in. Terry S3255. The Vikings screwed up by not hiring Jim Harbaugh. They can make things right and hire his brother, John. Look, there's lots of teams, and I mentioned a couple of them. Dallas, Tampa. A good amount of teams that currently have head coaches where you can, like if you even want to coach Washington, where you can say, yes, that team would absolutely fire their coach to hire John Harbaugh. I don't think that the Vikings handled this well with J.J. McCarthy this year. And I do think that they faked the J.J. McCarthy ankle injury for as long. Like, no quarterback in the history of the league has missed 6 weeks with an ankle sprain. Kevin O'Connell's a damn good coach. Won Coach of the Year. Like, took Kirk Cousins' team to the playoffs with 1 million wins. Did it with Sam Darnold. They went 9, and you want to give Brian Flores a lot of credit, I get it. They did go 9-8 this year with terrible quarterback play. I actually don't think the Vikings are on the list of teams that should fire their head coach to bring in John Harbaugh. I'm still a huge, huge fan of Kevin O'Connell. YouTube.com/@thekostos. And we're going to start taking phone calls. I believe we're going to be able to do that now. So if you'd like to chime in on the phones, talk with me, Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. 310-840-4910 is the number. 310-840-4910. That number again, 310-840-4910. And let's talk some sports here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM. That was me like resetting there while also doing content for the show. I just wanted to give myself a Barry Horowitz pat on the back for that one. All right. Let's talk some college football. Because tomorrow night, the playoff returns. The semifinal. with Ole Miss and Miami in the Fiesta Bowl. And I'll talk about that game coming up in a little bit. But for right now, I want to talk about Friday night. The Peach Bowl in Atlanta. I believe, and I said this last Friday, coming off a couple days off when we had New Year's Eve with Miami, Ohio State, and then the 3 games on New Year's Day. I said this last Friday. I'll repeat it now. I think this is the national championship game. Winner on Friday night of the Peach Bowl with Indiana and Oregon, I believe, will win the national championship. The stakes impossibly high. The Hoosiers, in between at BetMGM, a 3.5 and a 4-point favorite. And just for the uninitiated that don't know what that means that the number is 3.5 at BetMGM, and it's juiced towards Indiana, which means we're kind of close to this going up to Indiana -4. That's why I say 3.75, because we're kind of in between 3.5 and 4. The number is 3.5 at MGM. If you wanted to bet it, you'd have to pay a little bit more to make that bet. We're close to being Indiana -4. The total of the game is 47.5. And before I break down what I think we'll actually see on the field on Friday night, we have to get into the YBYBTM. I think I want to turn this into a bit. I don't know if that is the bit. There's something here, though. The You Better You Bet time machine. And we don't have to go back in time too far. We got to go back to October of last year. October 11th, to be exact. Because on Saturday, October 11th, in the year of our Lord, 2025, Indiana went into Eugene and bullied the bully, punched the Oregon Ducks in the mouth, and walked out of Autzen Stadium a 30-20 winner in a result that felt to me, and I'm sure felt like to you as well, you the listener and you the viewer, and we talked about it at the time on the old show, felt like a tipping point, not just for this college football season, but potentially for years to come. Last year, not last year 2025, last college football season, Indiana went to the playoff and obviously got smoked by Notre Dame in the first playoff game at South Bend. And in the regular season, got smoked by Ohio State. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I liked Oregon in the game against Indiana when they played. I think a lot of people felt kind of like the same thing was probably going to happen, right? Like Indiana is going to be really good. They're going to beat up on the bad teams. And then when they have to step up in class, they're going to get shoved into a locker like they did last year against Ohio State and Notre Dame. The point spread of that game, and this is why some of this stuff is so funny looking back in retrospect. And I'm not even insinuating the point spread should have been different. It was what it was at the time because that's what people felt. A lot of money gets bet into these markets. It's just funny to look at in retrospect how wrong everybody was at that time. Oregon closed a touchdown favorite against Indiana. Now they're on a neutral, and Indiana's favored by 3.5 or 4. A gigantic, gigantic swing. And that was the moment where it was, whoa. Now, I didn't believe it. I was wrong. I always felt like Ohio State was the best team. Indiana beat them head-to-head. So I was wrong about that. Indiana showed in that moment they were the best team. And the benefit of hindsight has earned us and me the ability to say that. But it's pretty obvious at this point now, right? That was the statement of intent by Indiana going into Eugene, touchdown dog, turning Dante Moore over a couple times, and winning that football game. Pretty unbelievable. Kind of unbelievable how that happened, right? And now, we look at what Indiana's accomplished. Not just beating Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, but embarrassing Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Alabama now has assumed the mantle of bully. Indiana has assumed the mantle as the favorite, the presumptive national championship favorite, and the best team in the country. And when I think about this game that's going to play out on Friday night, I think about two things. And the first is this quote, and I want everyone to listen really closely to this. This was this week, Oregon linebacker Bryce Bedecker speaking to the media, talking about the Ducks' mindset heading into the game against Indiana on October 11th. Take a listen.
Yeah, I'm a believer everything happens for a reason. I think we needed that to kind of wake us up. Obviously, we came off a big Penn State win and kind of thought we were, pretty cool going into that week and pretty confident and got a little lackadaisical with our prep, I think. So it was a good wake-up call. And, I think the rest of the season leading up to this point is a pretty good testament to the way we responded to that loss.
I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Stuckey with the Action Network Big Bets on Campus podcast, who tweeted that clip last night with the caption that he wrote, "Curt Cignetti would never." So shout out to Stuckey for putting that on my radar. Hard to imagine an Indiana team doing that, right? With the way Curt Cignetti talks, like totally tore the team down to build it back up for Alabama in the Rose Bowl after beating Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. Like, we don't have to question the fact that Oregon thought who they were, believed their press clippings following the double overtime win. And at that point, that's still Drew Aller and James Franklin and the whiteout at Penn State. That's not whatever bastardized version of Penn State we got moving forward after Aller got hurt and James Franklin got fired. That's the number 3 team in the country, Penn State Nittany Lions, that Oregon went into Happy Valley and beat in the whiteout. And Oregon obviously was feeling itself coming out of that game. Hard to imagine Indiana doing that, or a Nick Saban Alabama team doing that, right? Just calling it like it is. Doesn't mean that Oregon can't be better moving forward. But that's pretty stunning, isn't it? That Oregon and Dan Lanning, with the culture he runs and the program that he's got there, that's how they felt going into that game against Indiana. And if you do that, Curt Cignetti in Indiana is going to punch you in the mouth and push you to the ground and take your lunch money. And that is exactly what happens. So my thought is, there is, especially if the players are talking about it, there's no way Oregon's underestimating, and they're the dog in the game, right? There's no way Oregon's underestimating Indiana coming into this game. You're going to get the best Oregon effort, and you're probably also going to get the best Indiana effort. And if that happens, who wins? Oregon or Indiana? If both give their best shot, who wins? And then I think about last week in the Orange Bowl, Oregon against Texas Tech. Now, Oregon won that game 23-0. And I spent 2 minutes breaking that game down because the game sucked and Texas Tech wasted my time and your time, you the listener and the viewer, with a miserable performance. And I'm thinking, man, Oregon plays like that again, Indiana's going to win by 20. The game's not going to be close. My sense is that Oregon kind of rope-a-dope their way through the game. Probably knew going in, hey, we got this team. Great. They beat every team in the Big 12 by 20. We're not a Big 12 team. We're one of the best teams in the Big 10. And they're not going to be able to abuse us on the line of scrimmage. And we're going to go for it on a million fourth downs because we can. And we're not going to push the tempo and go pedal to metal because we don't need to win this game. I can't prove that's what happened. But that's my sense, knowing how good a coach Dan Lanning is, despite what happened in the Indiana game. So I do think you're going to get a better Indiana game than what they showed against Texas Tech because the level of competition raises exponentially on Friday night. So, if you get the best effort from Indiana and the best effort from Oregon, who wins? I think the answer to that question is probably Indiana. That Indiana is better than Oregon. But that takes us to the other huge storyline coming into Friday night. Because yes, the team that plays and is going to be the favorite in the national championship game obviously is a monster deal and a monster story. The other big story on Friday night, which is going to be, I don't think is being talked about enough now, but certainly will in the lead up to the game and as the game is going on. If you look at any reputable or not reputable NFL mock draft for next year, or for this year, I guess, 2026, now that the calendar is flipped, the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in every single one are Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. So coming up on Friday night, you are going to have, and I don't know if that's going to be how it goes, if they're definitely going to be 1-2. Feels that way right now. You're going to have the first and second overall picks in the NFL draft at quarterback playing each other for a chance to go to the national championship game. And everyone assumes that the Raiders, who have the first overall pick, are going to pick Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner, who's like ChatGPT, create an NFL quarterback who says and does all the right things and is awesome on the field. AI spits out Fernando Mendoza. That's what it is. He's the ChatGPT quarterback, the AI quarterback. Like, hey, Gemini, create a quarterback that I want representing my franchise. Here's Fernando Mendoza. What happens if Dante Moore outplays him? What happens if Dante Moore and Oregon win the game and Moore's the better quarterback? Like, this is something that could swing the first overall pick in the NFL draft if Dante Moore looks awesome and Oregon wins this game. Okay? So if we all agree that that's the case, and how could you not, then we have to ask ourselves this question. Do you think Dante Moore is good enough to outplay Fernando Mendoza on Friday night? Because that's how Oregon wins this game, if Dante Moore outplays Fernando Mendoza. I'm not going to be arrogant enough to tell you I know the answer to that question. I don't. But here's what I do know, and I can be wrong. So I just say here's what I think. But I think I'm going to bet it, so I guess I do know to an extent, and then we'll find out when the game starts. I think Dante Moore, and I know Dante Moore is going to play well in this game. I think he's a big-time quarterback. And I don't know if it's going to be enough to get Oregon over the finish line to win the game. But do I think Oregon can cover this number? I do. I want to wait for a 4. And I know there have been 4s already, but look, we're doing the show now, and the number's 3.5 at BetMGM. I'll bet plus 3.5 if I have to with Oregon. I'd love to bet a plus 4. Give myself a better chance to win my bet or push my bet. But the bet that I'm making is not that Oregon's going to win. It's that Dante Moore plays well enough to keep this game within shouting distance, that it's decided at the very end, one way or another. My best guess, Indiana wins a really close game. Dante Moore and Oregon cover the spread. On the other side, we'll break down Ole Miss and Miami in the Fiesta Bowl coming up tomorrow night. And I have a thought on this game that I think is going to surprise you, the listener, and you, the viewer. Keep on sending in the comments, youtube.com/@thekostos, and the phone number to chime in, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Nick Kostos and you better you bet, Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
12 consecutive completions for Chambliss. Going for 13. He has it. And another touchdown. Harrison Wallace having the night of his life.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Love a good Sean McDonough voice crack. Absolutely the best. What a call by Sean McDonough last Thursday night, along with Greg McElroy, as Ole Miss beats Georgia in the Sugar Bowl to advance to the national semifinal. The phone number to chime in, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Who do you like in Oregon and Indiana? Which quarterback do you prefer more in the game from an NFL perspective, Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore? And do you think the Ravens made the right call in firing Jim Harbaugh? The answer to that question is yes. But not everybody has to be correct all the time. Let me know what you think. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. And just candidly, I have not memorized the number yet, but I'm kind of robotic in the way I host a show. I will get there probably honestly by like tomorrow. Let me see if I can get it right now without looking. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Keep the YouTube comments coming, the YouTube questions coming, youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. We'll continue to read them over the course of the show. Now, Oregon, Indiana is the main event of this round of the college football playoff, of the semifinal round. I think winner of that game is going to win the national championship. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow night won't be a delectable appetizer. And that sounds like an insult to both teams. I really don't mean it as such. But look, I think Oregon, Indiana winner is going to win the Natty. It is what it is. Tomorrow night, Fiesta Bowl, Miami and Ole Miss. Miami currently at BetMGM. Make it legendary. Download the BetMGM app. Visit BetMGM.com. Miami, a 3.5-point favorite against the Rebels. Total is 51.5. And I was thinking about this game last night and thinking about it a little bit this morning before the show. Just the bracket being what it was. I always get a kick, and we all fill out brackets, right? I've been doing an NCAA tournament bracket literally since I was like 6 years old in my dad's office pool. I actually won my dad's office pool for the first time in 1994, which is the year that Arkansas beat Duke in the national championship game. Shout out to Big Nasty, Corliss Williamson, Scotty Thurman, the late great Nolan Richardson, and Arkansas for winning that game and helping me win the office pool, where my dad bought me NBA Jam for Super Nintendo and then definitely kept the rest of the money. But I didn't care because I had NBA Jam. But anyway, we all fill out a bracket every year, right? And you always get after I don't even think it takes until after the first round ends on Friday night. Right after the first day on Thursday, maybe the first half of the first day, where 0.002% of brackets are still 100% accurate. No one has a perfect bracket. I would like for someone to show me, and I'm sure, given that there's only 12 teams in the college football playoff, that someone had this matchup. Be honest. How many of you had Miami and Ole Miss in the semifinal? With Miami having to go to Texas A&M, and look, they were not like a huge dog in the game, but they were an underdog in the game on the road, at A&M, and then Ohio State on a neutral. And for Ole Miss, a bit of an easier path, get Tulane in the first game, but then play Georgia in the second game with a brand new head coach because the head coach left to go to LSU. You predicted this in sincerity, Ole Miss and Miami? Go. Why are you listening or watching this show right now? Go play the Powerball. Go play the lottery. I think you might win with that lucky streak that you're on right now. So pretty incredible that that's where we're at with Ole Miss against Miami. And we should make no bones about it. Miami is the better team. Miami's better than Ole Miss. And I think about Mario Cristobal, head coach of the... And I don't think he's a good in-game coach, but you can't argue with this result. They're in the semifinal, and they're favored to go play for a national championship. So at some point, we have to give Mario Cristobal credit. And for me, that time is absolutely now. And I think one of the most fun video games, and I'm a lifelong video game player, that's ever been... Well, what a shock, right? Listen to my show. Look at me. I love video games. Mario Maker. And I love, like, my Instagram will get, the algorithm feeds it to me. I'll watch it on YouTube. These levels that people create in Mario Maker of like Mario 3 or Mario 1, Super Mario World, etc. And this is what Mario Cristobal has done. This is Mario Maker, college football version. Except instead of creating a level of Mario 3 where Mario has to elude 9 million fireballs and 15 Bowsers jumping at him and 9,000 Koopas, instead, Mario Maker has created an NFL offensive and defensive line that features top 10 picks in the NFL draft at both per any reputable mock draft that you look at. Mario Cristobal's done an unbelievable job. And Miami's defensive line absolutely leaned on Ohio State's offensive line. Buckeyes couldn't run the ball in the game. Julian Sayin under duress. And it was too little too late by the time Ohio State got it rolling offensively for the Buckeyes to come back. Mario, I think a lot of people say Mario. I've always said Mario. I'm from New York, so I feel like I'm correct. Sorry, I think I'm wrong about that. 310-840-4910. I got it right. 310-840-4910. Mario is one of my favorite intellectual properties, IPs, growing up. Another one of my favorites is Star Wars. We're about to get really nerdy. Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, with what he did last week in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, to me, he's the best player on the field in that game. And who would deny this? The MVP of the game. That was like a star-making, not that he wasn't great previously, but that is a star-making moment for Trinidad Chambliss last Thursday night against Georgia. It felt like, to me, the end of Star Wars A New Hope. And everyone in the chat is talking about Andor. And I haven't seen the second season. Please don't spoil it for me. Thank you. So I haven't watched it yet because of football season. Where it felt like, to me, Trinidad Chambliss was like Luke Skywalker at the end. And I'll spoil this because the movie came out in the 1970s. And he blew up the Death Star, and the Death Star is Georgia. And I don't know who technically is Obi-Wan Kenobi in this instance. Is it Lane Kiffin? Is Lane Kiffin Darth Vader? Is Pete Golding I don't know who Obi-Wan is. But anyway, Trinidad Chambliss blew up the Death Star. And he's got the Force. He's got it. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, I think this is Empire Strikes Back. Luke Skywalker or Trinidad Chambliss. He's got the Force. Everybody knows it. Maybe he spent the week with Charlie Weiss Jr. on Dagobah, like Luke Skywalker did with Master Yoda, trying to get his power straightened out. And if Trinidad Chambliss wins this game tomorrow night against Miami, he goes into the national championship game, and he will be Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker. And that will be a problem for Oregon or Indiana. I'm going to like Oregon or Indiana in the game, but I acknowledge the upside of Trinidad Chambliss is sky freaking high. You better you bet on this Wednesday. Nick Kostos here with you. 310-840-4910, youtube.com/@thekostos, @thekostos on all social platforms. I don't think Chambliss is going to get Ole Miss over the finish line to win a national championship. But tomorrow night against Miami, I do like him. And I do like Ole Miss. Trinidad Chambliss has it. Whatever it is. I don't think Carson Beck does. Now it, in the case of Carson Beck, could be like tons of Instagram followers or like Instagram model girlfriend. And I'm not hating on that at all. All good. But if you're comparing these two quarterbacks, I don't think there is a comparison. It's Trinidad Chambliss. And y'all pay homage to the man. Point spread's 3.5. Give me the Rebels plus the points. And I think Ole Miss is going to win the game tomorrow night and advance to the national championship game. Quick break, and coming up next here, You Bet Westwood One Sports on this Wednesday. We will get into more of the coaching news that we've seen the last couple days in the NFL. And I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals, who fired Jonathan Gannon. What jerks. Like right after we went off the air on Monday, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it. I'm going to tell you why I think the Arizona Cardinals are not far off from serious contention. And we'll talk about a mistake that I think the Dallas Cowboys made as well to wrap up hour number 2 here on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
had our chances. It just, out-executed us there for 4 quarters. But I appreciate the fight. We went down swinging, I thought. Just didn't have enough in the tank. So
now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
What a calamity for the Arizona Cardinals and for fired head coach Jonathan Gannon. And just to say this, because I love video games, the best Zelda game, I think everyone thinks it's Ocarina of Time. I didn't hate the game. I didn't love it. Like, the water temple drove me crazy. This is also kind of like, I guess the internet was around at that point, but I don't know. Like, now I feel like you could just, on your phone, type, how do I beat the water temple? And it comes up. I hated that level in Ocarina of Time. The best Zelda games in order, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past for Super Nintendo is number 1. And 1A is Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Switch. I have not yet played Tears of the Kingdom, but I probably will at some point. Now that I have a kid, it's just like, it's very difficult, unfortunately. I'm about to beat Ghost of Yotai on PlayStation 5. I started playing it in early October. It used to take me like 3 weeks to beat a game. Now it takes me 3 months. I love my daughter very much and my family. I also wish that I still had time to play video games, because all my free time now goes to sports and entertaining and informing you, our listeners and viewers. About an hour from now, I'm going to give you all my bets for tonight. Hopefully they'll go better than they did on Monday. If you, the listener, you, the viewer, if you're betting on the NBA this season, and you should be, here's something that'll take the pressure off your picks. With today's NBA no sweat token, you don't need to sweat it. If your bet doesn't hit, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $1,000. That is an unbelievable offer from BetMGM, and I'm not just saying that because they sponsor the show and I'm an ambassador for them. Like, that is actually legitimately a great offer. Download the BetMGM app, visit BetMGM.com, and make it legendary. So the Arizona Cardinals fire head coach Jonathan Gannon and now have a vacancy at that spot. General manager Monty Ossenfort will return for the Arizona Cardinals. And I don't really have much of a beef with that as far as Arizona is concerned, keeping the GM but firing the head coach. I think Monty Ossenfort has done a pretty good job picking players. I don't even know, candidly, if I agree fully with the decision to fire Jonathan Gannon. I think you could make a case either way for Arizona. The case for Jonathan Gannon, and actually I want to stop this here because we have, per Ian Rappaport, we have news out of Baltimore with the Ravens. And again, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910, the number. You agree or disagree with me that the Ravens needed to fire John Harbaugh. Per NFL Media's Ian Rappaport, he just tweeted, quote, "The Ravens are looking for a head coach that will, quote, reach and invigorate Lamar Jackson." Good luck with that. Now, again, like, if you're the Ravens, you can't fire the quarterback. He's won multiple MVPs. His 29th birthday is today. You're never getting rid of the MVP quarterback. It's never going to happen. You had to do something, so you fire the head coach. The idea that Lamar Jackson needs to be reached at age 29 is probably not a good sign for him, that the Ravens know this, right? So I'm not absolving Lamar of blame, but I mean, his performance on the field has generally been pretty awesome, and invigorate Lamar Jackson. To me, that kind of means offensive head coach. And I had brought up Jesse Minter earlier in the show. I had brought up Chris Shula earlier in the show. Does Kevin Stefanski stay in division? And yes, like, Kevin Stefanski couldn't reach or invigorate Deshaun Watson. There's a joke to be told here. I won't make it. I think Deshaun Watson is probably like beyond reach and beyond invigoration at this point, given what's happened with him off the field and on the field and with the injuries. Is Kevin Stefanski the guy that can reach and invigorate Lamar Jackson? I think the answer to that question is definitely yes. I think Stefanski's an awesome coach. And I think a lot of people are caught up in, well, like, the Browns have won 8 games the last 2 seasons. I mean, look at what he's dealt with. Like, Deshaun Watson can't play. He can't. Watson gets hurt. Here's a litany of backup quarterbacks. Here's Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders. What coach is winning with that? He's a multiple-time Coach of the Year winner. Like, went to the playoffs with Joe Flacco a couple years off the couch. And Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year and won us a lot of money if you listen to the show. Shout out to Ken Barkley. That was pretty awesome. And beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Wild Card weekends in the COVID year in 2020. Stefanski's an awesome coach. And I think, I would love for Stefanski to go to my Giants. I actually prefer him to John Harbaugh. The Ravens should hire Kevin Stefanski if the Giants don't. That is an easy one. If you're trying to make this an offensive hire, no better candidate on the market for the Baltimore Ravens than Kevin Stefanski. But back to the Arizona Cardinals, who fired Jonathan Gannon. If you wanted to make the case for Jonathan Gannon keeping his job, it's a pretty easy one. We have seen NFL teams get hit hard and bitten hard by the injury bug. Not many like the Cardinals this season, where it's like all the good players got hurt. All the running backs, their best offensive linemen, the entire secondary, first-round pick Walter Nolan, every single running back, Marvin Harrison Jr. in and out of the lineup. I don't know how many coaches are winning with the 2025 Arizona Cardinals. And if you wanted to give Jonathan Gannon a pass because of that and say, okay, Kyler Murray's clearly not the guy. He has played his last down as a Cardinal. Let's see what he can do with a new quarterback. Let's see who they pick, and let's see how it goes. The case against Gannon, and this is ultimately what won out, and it's why I have no problem with the Cardinals deciding to fire Jonathan Gannon. We saw how it went with Jacoby Brissett, and not that Brissett would have been their choice to start next season. But we saw how this went, right, with Jacoby Brissett. Looked good for a couple games, and then they closed the year on a 9-game losing streak. And at the end of the year, these games weren't even competitive. They're getting blown out by other teams. 9-game losing streak to close the season, and you end the year 3-14. Okay, you want to fire him? I get it. I'm not going to complain, even if I think you could have made a case either way. With the Ravens, I think there's no case to be made to keep John Harbaugh. The Raiders, no case to be made to keep Pete Carroll. The Giants, prior to firing Brian Daboll, no case to be made for keeping Brian Daboll. You could act like the Titans with Brian Callahan, no case to be made. You could have made the case that they could have kept Jonathan Gannon, but I certainly understand why they didn't. And I do think, despite a lot of people probably believing the contrary, that this is a pretty attractive job in Arizona. The secondary is tremendous. There's talent on the defensive line. Got to get Walter Nolan healthy. You got to get Darius Robinson healthy. Josh Sweat's got to be healthy. You got to have healthy players, but you can say that about any team. I like the defense for Arizona. I really do. So if they hired, I'll throw in it, Jesse Minter. Chris Shula stays in division. I think they'd have this defense cooking with gas. Now, the offensive line's a problem. You got to get the offensive line in gear. You got to put a lot of resources into this offensive line. But you have, exciting players at the skill positions, right? James Conner will be back. Trey Benson's going to be back. Michael Wilson has been a revelation down that if you play fantasy football, you know this. Michael Wilson's the ugly kid in high school who's been ugly his or her entire life, goes away for a summer, no one sees him or her, and then they come back and they look great that fall. How'd that happen? Michael Wilson's never been a great player, and then he turned into Randy Moss down the stretch of the season for the Arizona Cardinals. So here's Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. Can the new head coach get Marvin Harrison right? And maybe Marvin Harrison will never be as good as Malik Neighbors. Maybe that'll be the case. He needs to be better than what he's been, and I see no reason why that can't be the case. So quarterback becomes the big problem for Arizona. Because as I said on Monday, Kyler's not going to be the quarterback of this team next year. I don't think he's going to be, at least. I can't see that happening. And the Cardinals have the 3rd pick in the draft. So they're not going to get, assuming Mendoza and Moore go 1-2, they're not going to get one of those guys. Now, the Raiders are picking a quarterback at 1. I don't think there's any doubt about it. The Jets have 3 first-round picks next year. Maybe the Jets decide we'll punt quarterback another year, and we'll build the roster up a little bit, and next year is our time to get a quarterback. If you're Arizona, I'm preparing packages to move up to 2 to take Dante Moore. That would be my goal if I'm the Arizona Cardinals. You get a quarterback in there in Arizona, a couple offensive linemen, you're not that far away from competing. I actually don't think that's the worst job on the market or close to it. I'm actually already contemplating an over-win total bet on the Arizona Cardinals for next season. While noting, I did lose my win total over on Arizona this season. Final hour, power hour coming up on the other side. We will get to the NBA. We'll get to college basketball. All my bets for tonight. And we'll talk the rest of the coaching news in the NFL, including the Dallas Cowboys firing defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos and the crew. Presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Bring it up, Kenny. Final hour. Power hour. You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Nick Kostos, our unbelievable crew, and whoever the hell you are. The Power Hour and every hour here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app, visit BetMGM.com. So you can make it legendary. Started the show today talking about the big story in sports, the Ravens firing John Harbaugh. I told you on Monday, this absolutely had to happen. There was no other reaction for the Ravens to have. Not an overreaction, only reaction for Baltimore firing John Harbaugh. Cannot miss the playoffs in a year of Lamar Jackson's prime. Cannot lose at a Pittsburgh Steelers team without DK Metcalf on Sunday Night Football to close the year. Cannot have it. Baltimore Ravens absolutely did the right thing. Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti called it a difficult decision in the press release the team put out, which I don't blame him for saying. There's no way this was a difficult decision. The only decision for the Baltimore Ravens. But despite me thinking that, John Harbaugh's an awesome coach. And he's going to get a job next year, assuming he wants to coach, and by all accounts, he does. And while I do believe that my team, and I'm not a homer when I say this, the New York Football Giants are the best current opening for John Harbaugh, I wouldn't put it past a couple teams that have coaches to try and make a move. What about Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys? The Glazers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What about two teams in the playoffs this weekend? A lot of smoke around Matt LaFleur's job status with the Green Bay Packers. And whether you agree or disagree with that, you think it's crazy, I think it's crazy, there is a lot of smoke. What happens if the Packers lose to the Bears? And it's another early exit for Green Bay. Is LaFleur out of a job? I think LaFleur would get another job, but is he out of a job at Lambeau? Would John Harbaugh consider it? And the really juicy one. What if the Buffalo Bills, and I like Buffalo in the game. I think Buffalo is going to beat Jacksonville on Sunday. I do like Buffalo. What if the Bills lose in Jacksonville? Do the Bills fire Sean McDermott, who's on the same exact timeline with Josh Allen as John Harbaugh with Lamar Jackson? And would John Harbaugh want to go to Buffalo to coach Josh Allen to try and beat Lamar Jackson and beat Patrick Mahomes? Food for thought. As the Ravens fire John Harbaugh, we await to see who their next coach is going to be. Apparently someone who wants to, quote, reach and invigorate Lamar Jackson. To me, that says offensive coach. Maybe it's Kevin Stefanski, the recently fired Browns coach. We shall see. But I love this from the Baltimore Ravens. Even if it lowers their floor and makes it more likely they go 8-9 again next year, I think it makes them more likely to win a Super Bowl with a different head coach other than John Harbaugh. Gave you my opinions on the two college football playoff games, why I think Indiana wins a close game against Oregon on Friday night. I like Oregon to cover the spread. And why I think Trinidad Chambliss and Ole Miss will beat Miami tomorrow night in the Fiesta Bowl. If you missed any of it, search You Bet wherever you find your podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe to You Better You Bet in podcast form. And remember, our new YouTube page, youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. And the phone number to chime in, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. A couple YouTube comments to get to. People in the YouTube chat seem to think the Eagles are going to fire Nick Sirianni. If, like, the Eagles lose this weekend, presumably against San Francisco, which I don't see happening. And the Eagles, over the course of the last 48 hours, have gotten blasted in the betting market in this game. The Eagles are now a 4.5-point favorite at home against San Fran. Total is 44.5. There were 2.5s on Sunday night. And this was 3, and then 3.5. And now we're sitting at 4.5. And I think we're probably just right here with this game with the Eagles and the Niners. And we'll see what the injury report has to hold for both teams, but obviously more so for San Francisco, who played to win on Saturday night against the Seattle Seahawks and obviously got stuffed into a locker by Seattle. And the Eagles treated last week like a bye week, like a glorified scrimmage, a preseason game, losing to the Washington Commanders. So the Eagles stars come into this game well-rested. So Philly is the healthier team. There's no question about it. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose. In fact, I think the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. And I think we get Eagles-Rams at some point in the NFC playoffs, whether it's next week or on Championship Sunday. I think the winner of that game will win the Super Bowl. I'll take the Eagles, but if someone wanted to take the Rams, I would certainly understand. This comes courtesy of our friend Mark Summers, who may or may not be the former host of Double Dare. Shout out to you. Mark writes, the Eagles would fire Sirianni. He's too attached to Kevin Patullo. That's what cost Doug Peterson his job. Well, I think what cost Doug Peterson his job is he basically played too much golf, especially with John Harbaugh out there. And that's not a crazy thought. Harbaugh came up, obviously, with the Eagles as special teams coach before he got hired by the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Summers would add, 2 complete collapses bookend the Super Bowl, and every intelligent fan knows it was Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio that won that Super Bowl for the Eagles. And whether or not that's true, you're not firing Nick Sirianni the year after you win a Super Bowl. And you win the NFC East again this year. And like Nick Sirianni, I think embarrasses himself at points. Remember last year he shaved his head like the NFL coaching equivalent of Britney Spears losing her mind following a loss. Sirianni did just win a Super Bowl. And he went to another. And the Eagles could have definitely won that game, the one they lost against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs. You're going to fire Nick Sirianni? Look, you want to tell me if the Eagles lose on to the night and the offense is bad, then you got to fire Patullo, obviously. And if Sirianni's going to make a point to say it's either both of us stay or both of us go, then yeah, then I think you'd be justified to fire him. I can't imagine he's that dumb. And you are dumb if that's what you say with the way the offense has gone this year. So yes, I will acknowledge if the Eagles offense bombs against a terrible and injury-riddled Niners defense on Sunday and Philly loses, and Nick Sirianni tells Howie Roseman, Patullo staying or we're both leaving, then yes, he would be justified in being fired. I cannot imagine that would ever happen. We'll see, but I can't imagine that would ever happen. You bet on this Wednesday, Westwood One Sports. Sports Wager, our friend chiming in on YouTube. It'll be 40 degrees at kickoff for the Eagles game. Niners are cooked. We'll be in the 30s by the second half. Brock Purdy did play at Iowa State. I don't know if I really want to go with the Niners can't win in the cold. Just think about this. Different team, obviously. But Kyle Shanahan coached the team. They did go a couple years ago, Saturday night, into Lambeau when the Packers were the 1 seed and Aaron Rodgers were the MVP. And the Niners did win that game. San Francisco has won games in the cold under Kyle Shanahan. So yes, I like the Eagles in the game. I would be pretty stunned if the Eagles lost. If they do, it's not going to be because the Niners can't play outdoors. So thank you for the comment and thank you for chiming in. YouTube.com/@the-Kostos. No way, though, the Niners are losing. It's because of the cold weather. All right, Westwood One Sports here with you on a Wednesday. Presented by BetMGM. Some more coaching news in the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys fired defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus. And longtime listeners and viewers of the show know that I am not especially fond of Matt Eberflus. Not that he isn't a nice guy. I don't know him personally. He actually comes across as a very nice guy. I don't know him personally, but just saying. As a football coach, I'm not a huge fan. I called him Matt Eberflus all last season with the Chicago Bears. And said prior to last season, when everyone loved the Bears over win total after taking Caleb Williams first overall, no way they're going with this guy as the coach and Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator. No way. No way. So Eberflus gets fired. Eberflus gets fired, rightly, after a lose to the Lions on Thanksgiving, where he doesn't know how to use his timeouts at the end of the game. And then he gets hired as the Cowboys defensive coordinator. And I think Matt Eberflus is a pretty good defensive coordinator. Was a good enough DC at Indianapolis that he got hired as a head coach, and whether you want to say it was the right or wrong hire, clearly was wrong. He did receive like a bunch of interest from other teams for head coaching vacancies. He's not a bad coach. But look, this was not figuratively, literally, a historically bad defense this year for the Dallas Cowboys. Aaron Schatz, who works for FTN now, created a metric that a lot of people will use and cite in the NFL called DVOA to measure like how good or bad a team is. In the history of DVOA, which I believe extends back through the Super Bowl era, at least to the early 80s, so like a long-ass time, the Dallas Cowboys by DVOA, which is not gospel, but I think it's important. It's a fun reference and a fun context here. The 2025 Dallas Cowboys are the fourth worst defense in the history of this metric, in the history of DVOA. So when you view things through that prism, yes, you needed to make a change at defensive coordinator. But can I please remind everybody for a moment that the Dallas Cowboys, before the start of the regular season, traded Micah Parsons. Like top 3 defensive player of the year, gone before the start of the year. So the Cowboys could stop, and like I blew my top on this when it happened. Parsons actually a great run defending defensive end, but let's not let the facts get in the way of the story Jerry Jones wants to tell, which is he didn't want to pay Parsons for whatever the reason, because he could have paid him 12 to 18 months earlier, much less money, and made all of this work, and he screwed it up. Now, did Matt Eberflus do a good job this season? No. Like, he didn't. You can't say a fourth worst defense in the history of DVOA is a good job. I also don't know, like, what are you supposed to do? With all the injuries on this defense, Overshown's hurt, defensive linemen are hurt, Trevon Diggs is hurt, Bland's hurt. Like, you got nothing cooking here on defense. Of course you're going to get shredded. I'm not saying at all that Eberflus did a good job. But I think if you wanted to bring him back, you could actually get away with it. And I do think he actually got a raw deal here from the Dallas Cowboys. And he said as much. And I don't even look at it as him like bitching and moaning or pointing a finger. Like, he took the job. He's going to coach Micah Parsons. And now he doesn't have Micah Parsons anymore, and they can't rush the passer. I don't necessarily think that's fair to Matt Eberflus. And now, for the Dallas Cowboys, they have a decision to make. Who's the next defensive coordinator to be paired with Brian Schottenheimer, the head coach, and who's running the offense, along with a guy I think is a future head coach in the NFL, Clayton Adams, as the offensive coordinator. I think Jeff Ulbricht's an interesting name, who's the Falcons' defensive coordinator, obviously with Raheem Morris getting fired. Maybe Brian Flores wants to make a lateral move. Maybe Flores gets a head coaching job. What we know about the Cowboys' offense is that it's really good. With Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and the offensive line, which is young and really good and cost-controlled for the moment, you have to imagine that the Cowboys will figure it out with George Pickens, although I guess we shouldn't put anything past Jerry Jones. So the offense is going to be good. Right now, the Cowboys have the 12th and 20th overall picks in the first rounds of the draft by virtue of all the various trades that they made, 12 and 20. I think they're going to take 2 defensive players. If the defense gets up to snuff this year, get a better pass rush, get some better health luck, why can't the Cowboys be a playoff team next year in the NFC? Now, they're America's team. They're a public team. And you have to imagine that people are always interested in betting the Cowboys. But you know, if the over-under win total for Dallas is going to be, what do you think it's going to be? YouTube chat, what do you think the Cowboys win? Without knowing, right, what the offseason is going to hold. 310-840-4910. What do you think the Cowboys win total will be next season? 7.5? 8.5 at best. At best, 8.5 to finish over 500. I'll tell you right now, blindly, I like the over right now, as I think that if they can get this defense fixed a little bit, the offense is good enough where the defense just has to be like regular bad for them to win 9 games. Historically bad, you're finishing below 500. Normal bad? Yeah, they're going 9-8 with that offense, provided it stays healthy. So yes, I think Matt Eberflus got a raw deal. But I also think that the Cowboys next year, with a different coordinator and some new players, can be way, way better defensively and way, way better of a team. You bet on this Wednesday. Westwood One Sports. Nick Kostos here with you at the Kostos on all socials, presented by BetMGM. We do have a piece of breaking news in college football. Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson will declare for the NFL draft. And we last saw Ty Simpson getting hurt in the Rose Bowl against Indiana as Alabama got absolutely thumped in that game by Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers. And I think this is a very, very, very smart move by Ty Simpson. Because it looks like Trinidad Chambliss is coming back. He thinks he's going to try and get another year of eligibility, going to get paid by Ole Miss to do so. And outside of Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore, especially with Arch Manning looking likely to come back for Texas next year, like Ty Simpson might be an end of the first round pick, early second round pick. How many other quarterbacks are there going to be? The other thing about Ty Simpson is Keelan Russell is a name that you, the listener, and you, the viewer, might not be familiar with. It's time, as a famous rap producer once said, for you to get familiar. Keelan Russell is a 5-star recruit, and he is Kalen DeBoer's guy. Even if Ty Simpson came back next year, I think Keelan Russell would probably be the starting quarterback for Alabama. He's the highest rated recruit in the history of Alabama, Keelan Russell. He's going to play next year. So Ty Simpson, A, looks at the draft landscape. 2, sees Keelan Russell there. And D, knows that even if he plays next year, this is my opinion now, Ty Simpson had some great moments this year for Alabama. When Alabama was on a huge winning streak, and he was towards the top of the Heisman market. Remember, that was the thing. When he was under pressure this year, he was not as good. I don't love him as an NFL prospect for that reason. Now, I'm not hashtag grinding the film and hashtag watching the all 22. I don't love Ty Simpson, but given the dearth of quarterbacks right now in next year's NFL draft, and the guy that's behind him in Tuscaloosa, I think this is a smart move from Ty Simpson to declare for the NFL draft. We'll take a quick break. And on the other side, the Washington Commanders and Dan Quinn firing both coordinators. You think his seat's a little hot? We'll talk about the Washington Commanders heading into next year. And Dan Campbell gave himself an F for this season with the Detroit Lions. I think he's being a little hard on himself. And I'm going to tell you why. Coming up next here on You Better You Bet.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
How do you feel like you did this year on the job being the head coach of the Lions?
Not good enough. We didn't get in. I mean, we underachieved, so not good. I would give myself a freaking F.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Lions head coach Dan Campbell, always good for a great soundbite. Not just an F, a freaking F. Our video producer, Mike Brown, says in our show chat that he sounds sad. I'd be sad, too, if I were Dan Campbell. And, you know, when I think about the Lions and I think about Dan Campbell, and if you agree with Dan Campbell, you think he deserves an F, or if you disagree, 310-840-4910, the call and the text line, youtube.com/@thekostos to chime in. We will read your comments, take your phone calls here on the show. I think back to when the Lions lost the NFC Championship game, San Francisco, a couple years ago. And I wanted to cry after that game because I bet Lions money line. And they were up 24-7 at the half, and I still think they should have gone for the touchdown to go up 28-7 at the end. I thought that in the moment. Campbell always went for fourth downs, especially at that point. And you kick a field goal to go up 17. Not that that's the reason why they lost the game, but man, 28-7 feels better than 24-7 going into the half. When the Lions lost that game to San Francisco, Dan Campbell said post-game, "We may never get here again." And in the moment, I was like, whoa, it's a heavy comment. And he told the team, we may never get this far again. And since then, a divisional round playoff, not a first round loss, but a first game loss for the Lions, just a little over a year ago, at home to the Washington Commanders. And then a last place finish this season in the NFC North at 9-8. Which, by the way, if you're a Lions fan or a Lions bettor, like if you're going to finish 9-8, finish in last place, because now you get a last place schedule next year, where the Lions, instead of having to face like the juggernauts of the NFL like they've had to with the first place schedule, now they get the New Orleans Saints, the Arizona Cardinals, and the New York Football Giants next year. Way better. Like, way better than, like, having to play some first place. If you're going to miss the playoffs, at least you get to play a couple bad teams next year as a result. And who knows if they're going to be bad, but on paper, you sign up for that. So that's a little silver lining here for the Detroit Lions. The Lions also fired offensive coordinator John Morton. What a shock. Did anyone see that coming, given that Dan Campbell took over the offensive play calling duties during the season? Like, you think he was just going to go back and be like, yeah, John Morton's coming back. Like, I demoted him basically publicly during the season, but yeah, he's going to come back as my offensive coordinator. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. And Campbell, who had obviously struck gold with Ben Johnson and struck gold with Aaron Glenn, and Glenn did not have a great first year as the coach of the Jets, but was a good enough defensive coordinator that he merited a ton of head coaching interest. I think a lot of people assumed that he would just get it right and that blindly, there was a lot of trust and a lot of faith in Dan Campbell to nail the coordinator hires. And maybe he got it right with Kelvin Shepard on defense. The Lions just got absolutely slammed by injuries again this season, especially in the secondary. The offensive hire was very poor in John Morton. And because Dan Campbell felt like he needed to take the play calling duties on, and I'm a huge Dan Campbell fan, I thought his game management suffered a little bit. And I normally love Dan Campbell's game management. But when you've got these dual roles here, it's probably not going to go great. Like, not many coaches are able to pull that off, especially one who hasn't really done it since like his first year on the job. And you really see the stark contrast with Ben Johnson calling this offense and what it was this year for the Detroit Lions. Now, some of this was not Dan Campbell's fault because you can only do so much with play calling. Like the interior of the offensive line was bad for Detroit. And I talked about that coming into the year, right? Where Frank Ragnow retires and he tried to come back and he was hurt. So, that didn't go so well. But you have Graham Glasgow at center and two young guards. This was not exactly, Kevin Zeitler playing next to Frank Ragnow. It's not what it was for the Detroit Lions. And then you have Taylor Decker, who's like the star left tackle, who's contemplating retirement now, who's injured all season. Penei Sewell's not 100% healthy. David Montgomery looked like he fell off a cliff towards the end of the year. The defense is obviously destroyed by injuries. And that's how you get to a 9-8 finish and last place in a really good division. Now, do I think it's fair for Dan Campbell to give himself an F? I don't. I don't think that it was an F performance by Dan Campbell. I actually think they got a little unlucky this year with this record being what it is. And that a bunch of these losses were coin flippy results that if they had gone the Lions' way, not that Detroit was going to win the Super Bowl ever, but yeah, they absolutely could have been a playoff team. They just beat the Bears. The Bears were trying to win that game. They just beat the Bears in Chicago to close the year. This is not a bad team. I respect Dan Campbell saying it's an F, because if I were him, I would call it an F. I'm calling a spade a spade. Miss the playoffs, it's a failure. I don't think it's an F for Dan Campbell. If you made me pick right now, make me bet it right now, will the Lions be back in the playoffs next year? I would say the answer to that question is yes. You bet here on this Wednesday, Westwood One Sports presented by BetMGM. Couple comments from the YouTube chat. Our friend John Canton says, loves my take on the Eagles-Rams NFC title game, but he likes the Rams to win, and the Rams are going on a revenge tour, which presumably, I guess they did lose to Carolina earlier this season. So presumably the revenge tour is beat the Panthers in Carolina, which I very much expect them to do, beat the Seahawks in Seattle, and beat the Eagles in Philadelphia. Not impossible. And if the Eagles don't win the Super Bowl and Philly's my pick, I do think it'll be the LA Rams. So, John, I think you're on to something there. With the Rams, I'll take Philly, but I do think the Rams are the next likely option to win the Super Bowl. Our buddy Derek Wagner writes, if Brian Flores doesn't get the Vegas head coaching job, wants him to be the Cowboys' new defensive coordinator, and would bet the Cowboys to win the division the day that they hired him. And for Flores, and Derek, thank you for the comments, I agree with that. I don't know about the division just because the Eagles are so good, but certainly to make the playoffs. And I actually think like a lateral move for Flores on the surface may not make sense. But Flores is in Minnesota, and this is not to disparage Minnesota, but the Minnesota Vikings are not a public team the way that the Dallas Cowboys are, right? If Brian Flores goes to Dallas, let's say that he leaves the Vikings and he becomes the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys for Brian Schottenheimer, which, by the way, I would just say fire Schottenheimer and make Flores the head coach, but if he goes to be the DC in Dallas, and the Cowboys turn it around defensively, right? And they use their two first-round picks on defense, and Flores gets the defense humming, and Dallas goes back to the playoffs, who do you, the listener, who do you, the viewer, who do you think is going to get the credit? Is Brian Schottenheimer going to get the credit? No way. Flores is going to get the credit. And that would likely be enough, where Flores doesn't get a job this offseason, where that springboards him into contention to get a head coaching job, certainly next offseason. If he fixes what was a historically bad, like not Jacksonville Jaguars defense, and I'm not trying to disparage Jacksonville, but like the Cowboys are the Cowboys. If he fixes what was a historically bad Cowboys defense, he's going to get a head coaching job. He just is. So if you're Brian Flores, I actually think it makes sense. And I love this comment, Derek. Thank you very much. YouTube.com/@thekostos. I think it makes a lot of sense to make a lateral move. If Dallas is interested, and the Cowboys, to be clear, would be insane not to be interested in Brian Flores. Void Null writes in the chat, wants to see Dan Campbell #finish the story. Nice nod to Cody Rhodes there in WWE. He was a player on the 0-16 Lions. Make Detroit relevant again, or at least make the Super Bowl. Maybe Detroit's able to get back there. I think he may have been right that their best chance was in the NFC Championship game. They were the better team in that game than San Francisco. And remember, the first game of the NFL season that year, the kickoff game, was Detroit at Kansas City. I was in Vegas for that game with Ken Barkley. Now, Chris Jones didn't play in that game. Chris Jones, he was in like the owner's box, right? He was still holding out for a new contract. Travis Kelce didn't play in that game. The Lions won that game in Kansas City. They beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. That would have been your Super Bowl matchup, Lions and Chiefs. Oh my. Who knows what would have happened if the Lions had won that game. Instead, we got a collapse in the second half for the ages, and that may have been it for Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. Couple other coaching notes in the NFL. 310-840-4910 to chime in on the Ravens, to chime in on your favorite NFL team, chime in on Wild Card Weekend, chime in on the college football playoff. 310-840-4910, youtube.com/@thekostos. The Tennessee Titans, and this just came out from our friends at Pro Football Talk with Mike Florio and his team over at NBC Sports. The Tennessee Titans this year saw their attendance drop 9%. It's a huge number, 9%. And in a year where you had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and he's a quarterback in Cam Ward, even if the team is bad, you would expect there to be a lot of interest and a lot of buzz around the team. Instead, you got the total opposite. You had a coach in Brian Callahan who was so bad he didn't even make it to mid-season. And then you had retread Mike McCoy coaching the team down the stretch, and obviously not a lot of talent on the roster. And now, the attendance dropping the way that it did. Yesterday, a bunch of NFL insiders put out there that the Tennessee Titans would interview former Cowboys coach. I'm curious if you know the answer, the person listening, the person watching. Maybe you're thinking, oh, they're interviewing Mike McCarthy. That makes sense. No. Former Cowboys coach Jason Garrett was currently on NBC, and I think this is a nice job on NBC. My response to this, in my best Stone Cold Steve Austin voice: what? The clapper? Jason Garrett? You want to sell tickets, and you think Jason Garrett's the guy to do it? You want Jason Garrett mentoring Cam Ward? You want Jason Garrett managing an NFL game in the year of our Lord, 2026, 27, 28, potentially beyond? No way. And I'm not saying that Jason Garrett isn't good on television. He's really good on television. It's been a while since he coached in the NFL. I think this is an insane move by the Titans. And this news comes off the heels of their interview request for current Chiefs offensive coordinator and former Bears head coach, Matt Nagy. And Matt Nagy is close with Titans GM Mike Borgonzi, who just got elevated a little bit in a restructuring with the organization. He's the guy that's going to make the call, Mike Borgonzi, who the next head coach is, and will have final say over the roster. Now, Borgonzi is close with Matt Nagy. Dan Pompei, who's covered the NFL for a long time and is based out of Chicago, had a piece recently about Matt Nagy that got shared widely on social media. That Matt Nagy has kind of found himself since the Bears fired him, and that he's learned so much, and that the failures in Chicago with the Bears have prepared him for whatever his next job is. Which to me feels like interesting timing here. And I'm not blasting Dan Pompei. It was a really well-written piece. If I were him, I would write the same thing. It's a nice job by him. But this whitewashing of Matt Nagy's career as Bears head coach, to me, is insane. He was a horrible head coach with the Chicago Bears. Yes, they went 12-4 one year with Mitch Trubisky, and yes, Trubisky had a couple spike weeks. They were 12-4 because the defense forced a billion turnovers. Like, let's call it like it is. He was not a good head coach. Not a good head coach. And this idea that, well, he's found himself since then. Like, did anyone watch the Chiefs offense this year? They couldn't figure it out this year with Patrick Mahomes. With Patrick Mahomes, they couldn't figure it out. Couldn't get the passing offense rolling. Couldn't get any semblance of a run game. I don't care who the running back is. I don't care that Josh Simmons was in and out of the lineup, and I don't care that they had injuries along the offensive line. The Chiefs' offense was bad this year, and the Chiefs are quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes. Does anyone see a problem with any of this? And Nagy's the offensive coordinator. And yeah, like Andy Reid's probably more responsible for it as the head coach. Andy Reid has a long track record, over 25 years of success, 30 plus years, running and being a part of NFL offenses. I'm way more willing to blame Matt Nagy than I am Andy Reid. Way more willing. And you should be too. If it's Matt Nagy as the Titans head coach, if it's Jason Garrett as the Titans head coach, I feel for Cam Ward. And I feel for Titans fans. And that attendance drop that's already happened in Tennessee, man, it might be dropping a little bit more next season. Last coaching note, and then we'll do some NBA and college basketball to close the show on the other side. What's happening in Miami with the Dolphins feels like something out of a fever dream. This is like a Kafka novel for anyone not Mike Kafka, who was the Giants' interim coach, and not final boss of Final Fantasy VI, Kafka. This is the German, I think he's German, right? Mike Brown, let me know. Kafka, who writes surrealism, right? Where you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're on trial for a crime you didn't commit and you're wondering what the hell's going on. That's what this is, surrealism right now with the Miami Dolphins. Mike McDaniel, at the moment, remains the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And he's kind of twisting in the wind because the Dolphins don't have a GM. And when asked about it, Mike McDaniel, whose Dolphins closed the year with obviously a couple losses with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, says that he's going to be part of the GM process to hire the new GM. What? Really? Like Mike McDaniel, who hasn't won a playoff game in Miami? That Mike McDaniel is now going to help hire the new GM, which presumes that he will be above that GM in the power structure, even though he hasn't made the playoffs and has authored back-to-back embarrassing seasons as the head coach of Miami? Like, in no way, shape, or form should any of this be true. And I don't think it is. And I'm going to call BS here. We had the report last week that the Miami Dolphins were going to hire Troy Aikman, who's the ESPN Monday Night Football analyst, obviously Hall of Fame quarterback of the Cowboys, to consult on the Dolphins' next GM hire. Worth noting that since then, we've heard nothing about that. My sense is that it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, the fact that it was reported means that there's smoke to that fire. And if that's the case, what GM is coming in worth his or her salt and is going to keep Mike McDaniel as head coach? Like, the fact that Stephen Ross, the Dolphins owner, hasn't come out and said, Mike McDaniel's remaining as head coach and I will hire a GM, tells me that McDaniel's going to be out of a job. Am I 100% sure about that? I'm not, but I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the case. So McDaniel can say what he wants. He's the Dolphins coach until he's told otherwise. My guess is that he will be told otherwise at some point in the near future. We also had, out of Miami, Dolphins head coach Tua Tagovailoa saying that, quote, it would be dope to get a fresh start somewhere else. I think Dolphins fans agree. It would be dope for Tua to go somewhere else. What's also dope for Tua Tagovailoa is that he's getting paid like $55 million next year, no matter what team he plays for. Guaranteed money by virtue of one of the worst contracts in the history of sports handed out by the Dolphins a couple of years ago to Tua Tagovailoa. Tua will not be the week one starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, nor will I don't even think he'll be on the roster. If you're Miami, you eat that money, you get him out of the building. Let him go play and be a backup somewhere else. And maybe he'll be the week one starting quarterback of a team next year as a bridge. There ain't no way he's starting as like the franchise option for a team. And I think with Tua, we've seen the limitations on full display. His arm strength isn't what it was. Not that it was ever really that great. I guess at Bama it was pretty good. The arm strength has deteriorated. All the concussions, the bad PR. He says dumb things after games. He's got brilliantly white fake teeth, and I'm not criticizing him at all. But he's smiling after games, flashing that $1 million smile when they lose and get railroaded when he gets benched. It's long past time for Tua Tagovailoa to be out in Miami. And Tyler in our chat writes that Tua loves showing off those teeth. Look, if I had $50 million, I'd probably get veneers also. Why not? And I'd be he looks like Roman Reigns. He should go join Roman Reigns in the bloodline in WWE. I'd show off my teeth also. Last YouTube comment for now. Franchise Davis writes, as a Bears fan, Matt Nagy's whole offense is based on having Patrick Mahomes, not changing his offense for the quarterback he has. I agree with that. And Matt Nagy had Patrick Mahomes this year, and the Chiefs' offense was brutal. Food for thought. And Derek Wagner writes in the YouTube chat, Nagy is the favorite at an offshore sports book to be the Nets head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Man, if that's who the Titans hire, they are royally, royally screwed. Coming up next, we will wrap up the show with thoughts from last night in the NBA. Why I think last night we got some problematic comments from Lakers star LeBron James, despite the fact that he scored 30 points in a win. I will explain. And we had a couple noteworthy results in college basketball that you, the listener, and you, the viewer, you have to be aware of, including the worst beat of the college basketball season if you bet on the game. That's all coming up next to wrap up the Wednesday edition of the show with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
possession game. And that is good to make it a 4-point game, fittingly, but Houston wins it by 4.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Jason Benetti with the call. Fox Sports, courtesy of it. That's the worst beat of the college basketball season thus far. And look, like, I'm not in the weeds to know if you bet like Saginaw State or something, if there's a bad beat. But as far as like the big conferences go, that is as bad as it gets. And thankfully, I did not bet the game last night. If I did, I actually would have taken the points with Texas Tech. This is a huge game in the Big 12. Houston and Texas Tech are both Final Four contenders. Houston closes a 6.5-point favorite in the game. Houston's up by 7 in the closing moments. And here's Christian Anderson from 45 feet away, not figuratively, literally 45 feet away. I know because I went to the actual game log. Makes a three-pointer from 45 feet away. That's meaningless as far as the game is concerned. But if you bet Texas Tech, you got inside the number to cover the spread. And if you laid it with Houston, that is an absolutely brutal beat. But look, if you bet long enough, like I have, like a lot of our listeners and viewers have, you know that this sort of stuff happens when you bet. And if you bet for long enough, you'll be on the right side of those as much as you're on the losing side, even if you remember the losers way more than you do the winners. I'll give you some bets for tonight in hoops coming up in a little bit. And if you, our listener and viewer, if you're betting on the NBA this season, here's something that'll take the pressure off your picks. With today's NBA No Sweat token, you don't need to sweat it. If your bet doesn't hit, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $1,000. Download the BetMGM app today. Visit BetMGM.com so you can make it legendary. All right, we'll hit a couple stories from college basketball and one from the NBA very quickly here. Kenny, let's go to the Kansas Jayhawks from last night and their star freshman, Darren Peterson, in a win over TCU. Okay, we will have that sound for you maybe tomorrow on the show. So Darren Peterson last night for Kansas scores 32 points in 32 minutes. And like I told you late last week, Darren Peterson's unbelievable. He's going to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Had a bunch of leg injuries earlier in the season, hamstring injuries, a quad injury. Now he's back and playing for Kansas. And yes, like they should beat TCU by more than 4. But if Darren Peterson's going to be this good, 32 points in 32 minutes, the ceiling for Kansas is to make the Final Four. I don't know if they can win the national championship if the team around him is good enough, but he's good enough absolutely to take Kansas to the Final Four. We also had this end game, Kenny, in the Michigan-Penn State game last night.
It comes down to the final trip. Lindebort right with Dillion. Down to 2. He's got to go. Down to 1. This is for the win. And it's off. A major sigh for the guys in maize and blue.
So Penn State almost beats Michigan last night, falling short at the buzzer. The Wolverines win 74-72. And Michigan, the number 1 team in the country, remains undefeated on the season. And Michigan looks like the best team in the country right now. But doesn't it feel like they're going to take a loss at some point here? It's January, they haven't lost yet. Now, maybe they're like Anthony, maybe they're the Kentucky team that made it all the way to the Final Four without losing a game. Maybe that's what this is. I doubt it for Michigan, even if I love the Michigan Wolverines. They host Wisconsin on Saturday and then go on a West Coast trip, which is like, this is how college sports is now, right, in the Big Ten. At Washington and at Oregon next week. I think Michigan will lose one of its next 3 games. I don't know which one yet. Need a little time to think about it. And then last night in the NBA, the Lakers beat the Pelicans 111-103. LeBron and Luka each scored 30 points in the game, and LeBron James had this to say after the game.
Nah, Luka don't need to bend his game. Luka is 20. How old is Luka? 27? 20. He's our 27-year-old franchise for this ball club. He don't need to bend his game. It's up to us to bend our game around him and figure it out. So,
LeBron James saying that he needs to bend his game for Luka Doncic. And that's great news if you're a Lakers fan, even if LeBron's only going to play 1 more year for the Lakers, because it means that LeBron's going to stick around this year. And you'd rather have LeBron than not have LeBron. But I hate it for LeBron James because the Lakers can't win a title this year. And if this is LeBron's final year, and I've said this a bunch this NBA season, I want him to waive his no-trade clause. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. Good for the Lakers, bad for LeBron, bad for basketball fans. Let's get to the bets for tonight. Kenny, please drop the dope-ass beat. So, look, we do the show early in the day. A lot of injury stuff going on in the NBA. Follow me on Instagram at the Kostos. I'll put in my Instagram story a little later all my bets for tonight. One bet that I will absolutely be making, though, in the NBA. I'm going to sell this recent run by the Detroit Pistons, who destroyed my Knicks on Monday night. 10.5-point home favorites against the Bulls. It's not that I don't think the Pistons will win, but I will take the points tonight with the Bulls plus the 10.5. Hit me up on Instagram, TheKostos. I will put all the rest of my plays for tonight there later in the evening. I'll catch you tomorrow on a tremendous Football Thursday. Until then, I'm Nick Kostos wishing you minimal sweats, winning bets, the absolute very best of luck.
That was You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.